Hey everyone, I'm here to semi-wrap up my Jane Austen videos. I'm going to finish up the last two novels today. I'm going to do Northanger Abbey and Persuasion, but the spin-off and movies like Clueless and a couple of the Bollywood adaptations and modernizations of Jane Austen, that's going to probably have to wait till September because I don't have time right now, so it won't be for Austen August. But I just remembered I saw on YouTube that Ariel from Books Unbound had started her own Austen Adventures series, so I guess I could include it as part of that. That was a few months ago that she started though, so since I'm going to be doing Northanger Abbey now, I figured that was the book that she reviewed because she was doing them in the order that they were written rather than published, which is what I'm doing. So yeah, I can find the link for that down below. I'll try to maybe post it as a response. We'll see. Okay, so what the book that I'm going to be talking about, as I said, is Northanger Abbey. This was actually Jane Austen's first book that she sold to a publisher, and it was sold in 1803 originally under the title Susan, which I'm assuming was supposed to be the main character's original name, instead it became Catherine. For some reason, the publisher just sat on this book for years and didn't do anything with it until Jane Austen's brother ended up buying it back anonymously. It was sold, I think, for £10. He bought it back for the £10. He didn't let the publisher know that it was, the same author of the highly popular books like Pride and Prejudice, etc., because I'm sure he would have demanded a much higher price. But this ended up being published posthumously. It was in I think a 4-volume set with this and Persuasion was all published together. So this book, I have to say, it's going to sound bad, it's my least favorite Jane Austen novel. That doesn't mean that I don't really like it in itself, but in comparison to her others, it's very different. It lacks the depth of her other works. It has a very different tone. It was very much a spoof of Gothic novels which were popular in that day and age. Like, for example, largely this one book, The Mysteries of Udolpho by Anne Radcliffe. It mirrors what's going on in that book, and it really spoofs it because the heroine Catherine loves to read Gothic novels, and then she essentially likes to think that her life is going to be like that, and it's really not. So it's very comedic, and I do love that aspect of it, and I love, especially, my number one thing to come out of this book is Henry Tilney, who is the romantic hero. I love Henry Tilney because he's just a really funny guy, and he's just like a flirty, funny dude, and I love men with a sense of humor, so he is my favorite Jane Austen man. So I love this book, if for nothing else, at least for Henry Tilney. Other than Henry, I find the romance in this kind of lacking, and it was all done intentionally, so I can't say that it was written poorly or anything. Catherine herself is she's not a very deep heroine. She's naive and that kind of thing. She's not really witty or very intelligent particularly or anything like that. I mean, she's okay. I sound like I'm just bashing it. I'm really not. I'm just describing my reasons why this is, in comparison to Austen's other works, why it doesn't quite measure up for me. On a side note, I have read, and I do own, The Mysteries of Udolpho. It is horrible. I read it just because of curiosity from this book. I have no desire to read any other Gothic novels. It's way too long and melodramatic. The main character, Emily, she's just constantly bursting into tears all the time, and I'm like, I don't care anymore. She finds things that are really not that frightening, but she exaggerates and thinks that everything is so scary and horrible, and it's just did not work for me, let's just say. But yeah, Northanger Abbey, I give a 3.5 out of 5, so it's a good book, but not my favorite Austen. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about the adaptations, and there are only 2. This is Austen's least adapted novel, probably because it's one of her least popular works. I don't know, maybe it's for the same reasons that I said why it's not quite my favorite. Maybe that's what filmmakers feel like as well. This is the first one. It was done in 1987. It was actually originally aired only 2 days after I was born. So it would have been on February 15th, 1987. And I have quite an in-depth and more comprehensive review, kind of more of a rant than an objective review, but none of my reviews are very objective, so I mean that doesn't even apply. On my text blog, just check for the link down below if you really want to know what I think about this version and all of the other Jane Austen adaptations. I recommend that you click on the links below. So I'm going to try to keep this fairly short because I could complain for hours and hours on end upon this version. But let's just say it's terrible. It was written by Maggie Wadey, who also did the 2007 Mansfield Park, which I really didn't like either. So you can kind of see that things are not looking good for it. This version is just, it's bizarre. I like to call it Northanger Abbey on acid because I feel that clearly the filmmakers were high when they did it. That can be the only explanation. And really, when I say film, this was a TV movie. I don't even know if it was originally aired on BBC, but it says BBC Video, so maybe it was BBC. I don't know, who cares? It was not a miniseries. It's a short TV movie, but you know, Northanger Abbey is a pretty short book, so whatever. That's not really my problem with it, the length at all. But before I really start ranting, let's just say the good. The good in this is that it was filmed on location in Bath, unlike the 2007 version where they filmed in Dublin. Eleanor Tilney, the actress who played her, I don't remember her name, was very good. And that's it. That is all that there is good about this version. It is just weird. The script is bad. The music is terrible. The acting was terrible aside from Eleanor. It was not good in any way. It seems like it really takes the book seriously. It doesn't realize that it's not a serious book and it's taking the gothic elements, unless it's supposed to be like some weird parody of a parody and the joke is actually on the audience. I don't know. I wasn't laughing except in one scene where Henry Tilney was singing very badly. I was laughing at him and I was embarrassed for the actor, but other than that, I did not find it funny. Catherine herself seems to be clearly on hallucinogens because she's constantly having like bizarre dream sequences and her eyes are like glazed over, like she has dreams of being, you know, kidnapped, tied up, possibly raped and tortured. I don't know. It's like Catherine in the book is kind of naive, yes, but this Catherine doesn't seem to be able to separate fantasy from reality. The actress, her name was actually Catherine as well with a K, Catherine Schlesinger. I have never heard or seen her in anything else. She was awful. When she didn't look like she was in a drug-induced stupor, she just bugged her eyes out all the time. So that can tell you right there. I know Catherine Morland is not my favorite Austen heroine, but this was just ridiculous. Henry Tilney is played by Peter Firth, who's actually a kind of well-known actor. He is not very good in this. He's too old to play Henry. He looked kind of like sweaty at times, not very appealing. His line delivery was like kind of, he seemed to give off almost an effeminate vibe. He didn't have Henry's sense of humor at all, unless I was laughing at him during the singing scene. They had no chemistry. It was just bad. It was all around bad. The other actors were bad. The only other actor that I know in this was Robert Hardy, who is Cornelius Fudge in the Harry Potter movies, and he's been in a bajillion other things. He played General Tilney, and he was bad. I'm just laughing at it. Like, he seemed like he was kind of drunk, and maybe that was, he was like boozing up, you know, off screen because being in this was so bad. I don't know. Basically, all I could say about this version is that it was horrible, but there is one more key thing. This movie invents a character that is not in the book. I don't know why, what their intention was to do. I don't know what they were thinking. It invents a character called the Marchioness, and my editing skills are too bad to post a picture, so just look on my blog link. But She is this like really creepy looking character who is the general's friend. I don't know if she's supposed to be his mistress or what. And she kind of reveals the truth about Catherine to the general. I don't want to spoil it. She's very scary looking. I don't know. Like, I just don't know this whole version. It just leaves me scratching my head. Like, what were they thinking? They were high. That had to have been. It was drugs. It was all drugs. I give this version a 1.5 out of 5, only because that I thought Eleanor was a good actress, and so it gets that extra half star. I only recommend it to complete a collection, which is the only reason why I have it as well. Okay, so you can imagine with having only that terrible 1987 version of Northanger Abbey for the longest time, when I and other Jane Austen fans heard about a new one coming out in 2007, we were very, very excited and eagerly awaited it. I was a little bit hesitant knowing that it was going to be scripted by Andrew Davies, and I know how he loves to sex things up, but the cast looked just wonderful, and I had very, very high hopes. So then it came out, this one. It's a 2007 ITV TV movie, not a miniseries. I found that I was totally right. The cast, for the large part, was completely brilliant. But Andrew Davies also seemed to miss the point. Not as bad as 1987. Instead of drugs in this, he seemed to find that Northanger Abbey was apparently all about sex. And he interpreted the story as being more kind of like Catherine's sexual awakening. Like, it's nothing overtly racy or risque, with the exception of, well, a couple scenes, but nothing that I would find normally offensive. It just wasn't Northanger Abbey. I'm just going to say that without giving spoilers. But other than that, I really love the cast. Catherine and Henry were great, especially Henry, played by J.J. Field. Oh my god, I'm in love with him. I possibly love him even more than I love Henry in the book, because he's so gorgeous, and I love his deep voice, and just... Okay, and this is just going to turn into me, like, raving on about how wonderful J.J. Field is, so I have to stop. The rest of the cast was really great, too, with what they were given, if occasionally things kind of irked me that were changed from the book, but with the exception of Eleanor Tilney, who's about 10 years too old for the part, and the general in this one was also kind of, he was, like, scary looking. It's like, I know the general is not a nice guy, but in the book, he's supposed to be a very good-looking man, and he's supposed to be all, you know, Mr. Politeness and propriety to Catherine when he still thinks that, you know, she's an heiress in the beginning. So this general is kind of scary, and I don't know why Catherine would want to go stay at his house. Like, I know Catherine is not the brightest, but come on, she's not that dumb. Yeah, so a couple of things were interesting in this. I've noticed Andrew Davies has, in a lot of his later adaptations, seemed to be copying things from older adaptations of books that were not in the books. Things that I noticed in Sense and Sensibility, something I noticed in his 2005 Bleak House, and in here as well. It copied a couple of things from the 1987 Northanger Abbey. They're all on my blog if you want to read them, but like, for example, Catherine burns her copy of The Mysteries of Udolpho, which is really weird because they barely did anything with Udolpho in this. They really focused on another book, The Monk, which they had Catherine read instead, because it's a more racy, scandalous book that really someone like Catherine would not have read during that time at all, but whatever. I'm not going to dwell and seem like a prude talking about all that stuff. It is a really good movie in itself. It's not as great as it could have been with the wonderful cast. The writing, I feel like, really let it down. So I give it a 3.5 out of 5. I like it. I really love it as its own movie. As an adaptation, it just doesn't really, it's not great for me. But it is good, and I do recommend it. Definitely better than the older one. Okay, so that wraps up Northanger Abbey. I'll see you guys in a minute when I'm going to be talking about Persuasion. Bye-bye!